One, two, three, four. Do 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 do. Ra da ba beep ba ba ba. Dee da dee da 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 da. Bing da ba ba da ba da ba da ba 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 ba. Hi, how are you? Good. First up this week, the ones number one, and then next issue will be called the twos. um. It's from Dark Horse. This is a new book written by Brian Michael Bendis, who once upon a time was the biggest deal over at the Marvel Comics Group, and he remained that way for most of this century thus far, until he went across the street to Detective Comics back in 2017, I want to say. Possibly 2018. And I don't think it went that good. I think he's still writing Young Justice, maybe. I feel like there's at least one DC title that he's still writing, but it feels like with very little fanfare, he has quietly moved his creator-owned stuff over to Dark Horse. I would imagine, I don't know. When Bendis was at Marvel, he did a few books, one of which, sorry, I'll start again. Once Bendis got into Marvel and he became such a big deal, they started publishing his creator-owned stuff as well, and they created an imprint called Icon to do that. I'm pretty sure it was created for Bendis' stuff. They ended up publishing other things like Matt Fraction's Casanova book. I can't remember the name of it now. It might just be Casanova, which he did with the Moon Brothers. Anyway, so, I mean, and Bendis started as an indie guy. Bendis' first thing was called AKA Goldfish, or just Goldfish, depending on who you ask. He also had books like Torso and Jinx. And in fact, Jinx became like his publishing empire, I guess you'd call it, is Jinx World. And then and one of those was Powers, which was a very big book for him and for Michael Avon Oeming, who drew it. That went to Icon eventually also. When he went to DC, he took a bunch of that stuff like Pearl, or was Pearl, did he create that for DC? That might have been it. But the United States of Murder Inc., he took that over to DC, which that was a book actually the DC one I never read. I have the original. Anyway. And it was, it was a very big deal. DC really made, a big thing about, hey, we got Bendis now. And I mean, I liked it. I liked what he did over there, but I've never met any like superhero fan who when you bring a guy like Brian Michael Bendis over from Marvel to DC, part of what you're getting is his devoted Marvel followers who probably don't read as much DC, which is definitely true in my case. And so when I read his like Superman, for example, it felt like he was really not pandering, but like writing while aware that there was going to be a lot of new readers to this book. And I can't think of anything that would infuriate superhero fans more than that. When I remember, for whatever reason, this sticks in my head, but I remember a long time ago, some internet chat board or something, people were talking about Kevin Smith's Green Arrow. Kevin Smith we'll be discussing him in a moment. Kevin Smith wrote Green Arrow for, a year or two. And, he did the same thing with Daredevil. Like, he had gotten big enough as a director and was like a, known comic book nerd celebrity. So he was able to parlay that into a run on Daredevil from the beginning, from a number one, which I think that was already going to start over anyway because it was the late 90s and things were falling apart. So, but they also gave Kevin Smith, the job. And then I think a similar thing happened with Green Arrow. It was a number one. They might have started Green Arrow over for him because that was such a get. And And I think I've read his Green Arrow. I definitely read his Daredevil, and I liked it. But I remember, and this is like 2005 or 6, when I was still relatively new to the internet and didn't realize that people just went on there to hate shit. But yeah, the discussion was Kevin Smith's Green Arrow, and I said something to the effect of, I didn't think it was that bad. And somebody replied to me, "Oh, just getting rid of all continuity from the last 10 years." And I went, all right, well, you got me. I don't know. And that's the thing, is when it comes to DC, I'd have to take your word for it. And I would not, if the opposite were to happen, which it never does, if some big DC guy were to come, well, I guess no, Jeff Lemire did just that. Jeff Lemire was another indie darling who himself is a huge DC guy, where he's the DC equivalent of me for Marvel. Sorry, I'm trying to eavesdrop on my neighbor's very loud conversation. It's got to be more interesting than this. What the hell was I saying? God damn it. Now I got all distracted. It doesn't matter. Oh, right. That's what I was going to say. Jeff Lemire came to Marvel from DC and he did fine. I liked his stuff great. He's a very good writer. And that's the thing with comic book nerds, is that I forget this myself, but the creative teams don't necessarily matter. What matters is the continuity. The continuity is not to be touched. That's why guys get so mad about the movies when they don't do them right. It's a very similar thing. Because it's so... I'm sure I've said this before, but like, keeping everything how it's supposed to be, which is just respectful of continuity, that's the only thing that most of us ask for. And it's ridiculous. Once I let go of all that, it was way more fun. Well, good. Sidebar over. Also this week, Hell to Pay, #1 by the great Charles Soule, drawn by the great Will Sliney. This is in the solicit pitched as Hellboy meets Indiana Jones. These two are a married couple. They are tasked with hunting down all 666 coins of the devil. And I want to say, nothing against Soule, but I want to say, well, I think maybe that's just a very common thing in satanic media. Like, I think the show was called Reaper, I want to say. Also produced by Kevin Smith, if I'm not mistaken. Boy, he's really coming up long. But it was a show about a guy whose parents had sold his soul to the devil when he was... that was the thing. They sold whatever it was that they got from the devil. The stipulation was that he would get their firstborn son when he became 21 years of age. They didn't think they would ever have children because she was sterile or something like that, but then they did. So now this 21-year-old kid is all of a sudden property of Satan, played to extremely great effect by Ray Wise, which has got to be one of the smartest casting decisions. Who do we get to play Satan? Oh, the psycho from Twin Peaks. Great idea. I actually knew him from RoboCop, but that's neither here nor there. And so, but it was a very good... Because then, okay, so the devil was like, I don't want your soul. I want you to help me hunt down escaped demons. And there are so many out there. So every week, there was a new one that he had to track down. There is another story where there's 666 of something out there, Pieces of the Devil or something like that. I read it not that long ago. And I'm not accusing anyone, certainly not Charles Soule, of being hacky. I'm just saying that that premise is such a... it's like a dinner bell for a writer, because you're like, oh, I can write at least 666 issues. Like, this has got serious potential. So I get that. Yeah. Look, it's Charles Soule and it's satanic stuff, so I'm doing it. Charles Soule, he writes a lot of Star Wars stuff these days. He also killed Wolverine back in 2014. That's still probably his biggest claim to fame. Will Sliney used to draw the last Spider-Man 2099 series, and I always thought the guy was good, but you don't really hear his name. I don't really hear his name batted around very much. So hopefully that'll change. And then finally, Quick Stops #1. I don't know if I've mentioned film director Kevin Smith yet, but this is anecdotes from the annals of the Askewniverse. So I'm kind of on the fence about Kevin Smith and have been for some time. When Clerks came out, I loved it. In fact, I think I didn't see Clerks until after I'd seen Chasing Amy, and then I went back and I watched Clerks and Mallrats, and I was like, because I remember when Mallrats came out, and I went, this a teen comedy, and I was, a teen myself. I was kind of sick of them. I really wish I had gone to see it, because that's my favorite one now. Is because I think, of the most full of comic book references than even Chasing Amy. So I love those 3 movies. I love Dogma. And then Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back came out, and what a turd. And the thing that really broke my heart about that, too, is one of the very appealing things about Kevin Smith's films, especially his early films, they are all in this Askewniverse. The View Askew was his production company. And it was a shared world, because the guy is a big comic book nerd. And I love that. I love world building. I love when Stephen King would do it in his books. And, obviously in superhero comics, I love that sort of thing, too. It's a very mighty Marvel manner. And then he somewhat famously went to doing other films like Jersey Girl and, Red State, I think, was also his. None of which I've seen. I don't think I've ever seen a non-Askewniverse Kevin Smith movie, because even the last one wasn't that good. Clerks 2, where he came back to revisit that, loved it. And I didn't see Clerks 3 when it was out just recently, because it was not very widely distributed. But the Jay and Silent Bob reboot they did a couple years ago, I tried to watch that. No, thank you. This is all to say that that's the other thing. Around the time of Chasing Amy, I want to say late 90s, they did. Yeah, it was pre-Dogma, in fact, because they did a Jay and Silent Bob series. They did a couple Clerks comics, drawn by Jim Mahfood, who's a great cartoonist. And then they did a Jay and Silent Bob miniseries, which bridged between Mallrats and Chasing Amy, right? Maybe even between Chasing Amy and Dogma. Yes, I think that's right. Yes, that's right. So that I love that. I love seeing that. I like those characters. But he hasn't done anything like that since. So this is it's even better than a new Clerks movie, frankly. Although I do look forward to seeing Clerks 3 eventually, because I like a trilogy. Who doesn't? I like Godfather 3. I like Spider-Man 3. How do you like them apples? There's no apples. There has been an apple near my face. Hello. One of these reading glasses. I look like an unsexy librarian. All right. So picks of last week. Just a couple. Also very satanic. I detect a theme in my life. First up is Damn Them All, #1. This is great fun. This is exactly what I knew Spurrier would do. A lot of great dialogue. I'll try and see if maybe I can. I'm pretty sure I was talking about this last week, how he really takes his dialogue very seriously. That sounded even stupider than I meant it to. So you can't really tell, but in this word balloon, the top couple sentences are in a lighter font than the bottom couple to denote whispering, instead of the traditional dashed lines around the thought balloon or word balloon. Stuff like that. Here's another one. Any kind of... you can't really see it with my stupid face or hand in the way. It's these sorts of little touches, though, that I really appreciate. Dialogue is always one of my favorite things in any kind of media. It's my favorite to write, personally, and it's my favorite to, you get a movie with great dialogue, Coen Brothers, for example. Oh, I'm in heaven. And it's those sorts of touches that really, I feel, make the dialogue good. The story is about this young lady whose uncle taught her how to hunt demons, speaking of which. And he or she works for a lot of London gangsters. Now, this is something when I was reading it that I had also noticed that there seems, because Dogs of London is also currently, the new issue just came out this week. So that's at least two. I'm sure I could think of another one if I had to, if I had a gun to my head. But oh boy, if only, right? So that's two books just this year about London gangsters combined with magic. And that seems right. I don't know what it is about British organized crime is really something. I love Guy Ritchie's movies. Any organized crime thing I'll watch. It doesn't have to be the mafia. But yeah, with the British do have real sense. I've never been to England, but you know, that has long been a very magical place, so to speak. You got Stonehenge, and you know, besides it being a Spinal Tap song, it's also, besides the monument on stage in danger of being crushed by a dwarf. Oh, sidebar. You know, I've been watching Spinal Tap pretty much every day my whole life. And so there's that line during the Stonehenge scene where David St. Hubbins says, I don't think it was that the band was off. I think it was that there was a Stonehenge monument on stage in danger of being crushed by a dwarf. I would laugh at that line every single time. And it was only a couple years ago that I finally heard his next line, which is, that tended to understate the hugeness of the object. Oh, such a good one. Anyway, sidebar over. I think it's cool. I think I love Magic Order. That's the other one. 3 is a pattern, and I have detected it. Magic Order is very much a gangster magician story, and I love it. And I do think it's a very English thing. It's, you know, it's where fairies come from and stuff. Well, like, especially when I was a kid, all the English writers that were coming to America to make their fortune, like Neil Gaiman and Alan Moore, and even, Grant Morrison, they're all magicians. Alan Moore specifically, very much so. So there's just something very much in that tradition of gangster comics and magic, and I can't get enough of it. This is also super satanic, and I'm way on board. And the thing of it is, I can't really talk about it without spoiling the first series, which came out 20 goddamn years ago, but I refuse to do it. So in this third, apparently it's going to be a trilogy. I like this too on the back of the copy on the back. The third volume in the American Jesus trilogy. Oh, I didn't realize. Oh, it was a trilogy, was it, the whole time, even when it was called Chosen, huh? So here we find our hero, Jody Christensen. He's now president of the United States, which I believe is that was the conclusion of the previous series, which I read and don't remember. It was only 2 or 3 years ago. I remember enjoying it fine, because I really liked the first one, and I can still remember that one. But like I say, though, there's tons of devil stuff in this, and I am all on board for that. So I'm looking forward to those two. Okay, good. Under 20 minutes. That feels about right. Did you want me to go on a 20-minute rant about something that was only somewhat related to comics? Well, you'll have to wait until next week. Okay, thank you. Won't you? Thank you.